to week 2 of the I Formation. I'm Jeff Gibbons.
I'm John Moist.
And here we are on the man couch in the man room, ready to talk about what happened in week 1 of the NFL season. And unfortunately, just like every other year, it seems like I got off to a slow start. 8-8 in my picks this week, but just a reminder, John being 10-6, neither one of us happy with our numbers right now, are we, John?
No.
But traditionally, as we said before, we outpick the pros in the long run. We usually have that first week trying to get acclimated to the role. And I think that, like I said before, there were a lot of changes in the NFL this year. Things that we're sort of looking at, some good stories and bylines happening, like certainly Peyton Manning's timetable to have the Denver Broncos in Peyton Manning shape has certainly gotten a lot shorter, hasn't it, John?
Peyton Manning looked like the Peyton Manning of old.
Absolutely. And certainly changed the way I thought a little bit about how everything may play out this year. We also saw your prediction for the running the table of the Green Bay Packers cut short.
I'm kind of glad that one's out of the way.
Pressure's off now, right?
Yeah, sure.
So we haven't got to worry about any anxiety in week 15 or 16. Yeah, I put myself out with a couple of picks last week that I got torched on too.
Great pick on the Cowboys.
The Cowboys, I feel really good about that one, and I think it was good to see Tony Romo step up and get away with getting through one of those close games that he lost so many of last year in the fourth quarter. I think we all held our breath for a second when we saw Jason Witten take that holding penalty and put him third in line, but Romo converted and was able to hang on and win that game. Over
300 yards and 3 touchdowns for Romo. He played an outstanding game.
He had some help too. David Ogletree, who had over 100 yards and receptions and a touchdown. DeMarco Murray, well over 100 yards.
Yes.
And of course those safeties.
The corners, Morris Claiborne and Brandon Carr, who you mentioned last week, by the way, and that was a great call because they certainly shut down the Giants receivers, and great job by those guys.
And I feel for the Giants when Cole went down to injury and that weakness on that one side in the secondary.
Fortunately.
Tom Coughlin was, his look said it all. Mm-hmm. And that's going to change the way we think about things this week as well. But it was good to have that first week over, and now we're going to press forward. I want to talk a little bit about some key players this week. Let's talk about game balls. Who's your game team this week?
My game team is the San Francisco 49ers, of course. I picked Green Bay to run the table, and the Niners took care of that in a hurry. They have probably the best defense in the game right now. Their defense is stellar as a unit. There's no one big standout man. They play as a unit, and they shut down the run. They're the best defense out there right now. Mm-hmm. And the Packers look confused. And,
absolutely.
Certainly San Francisco with Alex Smith as well. Converting 20 of 26, didn't throw an interception. When you get a quarterback like that, who doesn't make mistakes, and many people are not giving Smith the credit he deserves. A great quarterback is not always someone who throws for 300 or 400 yards. It's someone who doesn't make mistakes. And 20 of 26, no interceptions. You combine that with a stellar defense, it's not making any mistakes either, and you're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, good solid pick. Myself, I'm going to lean back to the Dallas Cowboys. And I think that it was just a wonderful thing, like I said before, to see these guys win that game that Tony Romo has let slip through his fingers so many times in his career. If anything, in a negative, Romo has always left that game on the table. And he was able to convert, he was able to move out those different receivers. We see people like David Ogletree, like I said before. Dez Bryant stepped up, DeMarco Murray. It was just good to see and utilize all those different parts of the field. And the defense, they were solid.
They were.
So that's my pick on the defense, or on the team. So let's look at individual performers. Who you see today? Who'd you like this week?
My player of the week, Peyton Manning. He looked like the Manning that led the Colts to the Super Bowl, and he picked apart the Pittsburgh Steelers. He ran a hurry-up offense, and he did a great job with it. He was calling audibles. He was reading defenses. Peyton Manning, I don't know how his neck is doing, but his brain is doing fine.
Awesome.
Who have you got?
I can't help but go back to one of the best defensive players and leaders to ever play the game. And this week, my game ball goes to Ray Lewis. and in Baltimore, and he was just a one-man wrecking machine against Cincinnati this week. 14 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 forced fumble that Ray Rice, the other Ray Rice, for those of you who picked that up in my podcast last week, ran in for a touchdown. So 7 points off that turnover. We had the Art Modell thing this week. They had the moment of silence. No doubt in the background, Lewis rallied those troops to win for Art. But I hope that he can find a way to keep that team as motivated as he did out there. They were just incredible.
They were.
And Joe Flacco, one thing that I've always thought about Joe Flacco is that, he's been the bus driver there, being the quarterback. But I don't think he gets to pick the routes for the bus. So I'm hoping that the more they give the ball to Flacco, the more they let him shape that game with Ray Rice and all those receivers, I think that that team can only get better. And I think Flacco is...
Yes.
They are the team that I talked about last week. They came out with a vengeance, and I call them to be a long shot, or not a long shot so much, but another team in the mix. And I think they really can get back to that greatness. I mean, we think about the team that won the Super Bowl so many years ago that had Ray Lewis on it. And that team was very, very strong on defense. And that sort of, that defense helped the offense by keeping so much of the, keeping them on the field. And I think that that team is back. But now we've got more added dimensions with, the running game and a quarterback that hopefully can take more charge. So Ray Lewis all the way. So stick around. We're going to talk about the picks for this week. Like I said before, I was 8-8 from last week. We're not going to review those picks this week, but next week we may start to look at them a little more closely. John was 10-6, so again, I'm humbled in your presence, but I'm in your rearview mirror, but I'm close by. I'm going to make some picks I know you're not going to agree with this week, but we'll talk to that, and in a moment we'll get back to the picks for this week. So stay tuned.
Hi, welcome back to the I Formation, and we are now going to make our picks for week number 2. And the first game up is Kansas City at Buffalo.
Well, it's interesting how last week we both had picks for Buffalo and Kansas City. Actually, I was on both sides, the wrong sides of the fence there. And this week, we don't agree on this pick, I understand, because I really think that Kansas City is going to go into that Buffalo team in Buffalo that seems to be in disarray. They beat themselves this week. Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing those 2 picks with points off of turnovers.
3 picks.
Well, 3 picks, but there was 2. I know there was 2 early in the game that had points off turnovers. Plus, I think they gave up a special teams punt return for a field goal or a kick return. Those kinds of things really hurt that team. I think Kansas City, who didn't play too bad this week, I think that they're the stronger team. I think they go in there and they run the ball against that Buffalo defense. So I'm picking KC.
I don't think so. I think Buffalo at home has something to prove. There's been a lot of hype about this team this year, and I think that Fitzpatrick is better than the way he played last week. And I think that the ground game, C.J. Spiller, 169 yards last week. Another big game for C.J. Spiller. I see Buffalo win this game. Close one. Buffalo takes it.
I see Spiller has moved up to the number 1 position now because of Jackson's injury.
Gone for 3 weeks, Fred Jackson.
That may make it a little bit harder on that Buffalo running team. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how that goes. Next up, we've got Atlanta at home to Denver.
And I'm a Broncos fan, but Matt Ryan, almost invincible at home. Very hard to beat Matt Ryan in Atlanta. Atlanta with the weapons that they've had. And this past week, they had Gonzalez with a big game. They had Matt Ryan throwing 3 touchdown passes. They were hitting on all cylinders this week. Denver had a great game as well, but I think Atlanta is going to win this game, and they're going to win handily by a touchdown at least.
I think there's going to be a smile on one side of your mouth after this week, because I think we can't stress enough how much Peyton Manning has arrived in Denver. And I think that if there's a defense out there that can beat Matt Ryan at home, it may be the Denver defense, who really did deserve a lot more credit last year for all the Tebow wins than they really got. I think that's a solid defense right across. I also think that Peyton Manning has a lot of offensive weapons out there. I think that they go in And this is a close game, but I think experience and just pure guts is going to win this game in the fourth quarter.
Hope you're right. Next we have Chicago Green Bay. That's a Thursday night game.
Yeah, and well, you heard what I said last week about Chicago. Matt Forte was my pick of the week last week. He had a decent week.
80 rushing yards, 40 in the air, I believe, 120 all-purpose.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that kind of a turnaround.
No.
The other side of that is, I think that if there was a team that was perfectly rounded this past week, it was the Chicago Bears. I think defensively played very, very well. Then they had big games out of people like Earl Bennett, Brandon Marshall, Matt Forte. Well-rounded offensive weapons. And I think, as we said before, Chicago always gives the Green Bay Packers trouble.
Jennings had 2 picks as well on defense for the Bears.
Yeah, we did. That's right. And I think that Green Bay is in a little disarray. Aaron Rodgers didn't look like the Aaron Rodgers of normal. I think there's an adjustment going on there with Cedric Benson. He didn't really have a big game this week for Green Bay, and there seemed to be a lot of disarray in that offensive line. I think Chicago goes into Green Bay, although always a tough assignment in Lambeau. I think they go in there and they win a squeaker.
I don't see it that way at all. I think Aaron Rodgers, I don't think he's going to have 2 bad games in a row. He didn't really have that bad a game last week. The Niners' defense confused him a bit, but he stood around. He was in that game. They only lost it by 8 points, was it? And I can't very well pick the Packers to run the table and then pick against them in week 2 either. But I really do think that Aaron Rodgers is going to show up this game. Greg Jennings is questionable right now. Not sure if he's going to play or not. Remains to be seen. But I think Jordy Nelson will have a big game in this one as well. And just because of Aaron Rodgers, I think Green Bay wins this game, and I think they win it handily.
Be interesting to see if those Green Bay Packers do go 0-2 in that division. Next up, we've got the Giants at home to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
New York Giants will bounce back in this game. Eli Manning will have a big game in this one. And that's all. Giants at home. Lost last week. They're up against the Bucs. Bucs had a great showing, but I don't think they got enough to beat the Giants.
I think that there was an exposure of that the New York Giants secondary. And I think when Cole went down to injury, that's what happened and changed that game last week in Dallas, and they started to exploit that hole. I think they're not there. I think there's an issue with depth on that defensive line. And I think what's going to happen is Tampa Bay is going to ground and pound that ball. I think they're going to take that, and I think that Josh Freeman has a big game in the air for the Bucs. And I think they go into New York and they steal this.
Are you kidding me?
Not at all, sir.
Not going to happen. Next, Baltimore at Philadelphia.
Well, some common ground.
Yes.
Both of us, I think, are picking the Baltimore Ravens to win in Philadelphia.
Yes.
And this was a tough call. We both thought about this one quite a long time, but after looking, as a matter of fact, you asked me about my picks this week, and I said I'm going to wait to see how Baltimore plays in the last night. And let me tell you, I'm thoroughly impressed with the Baltimore Ravens.
430 all-purpose yards on offense for the Ravens last night, and they punted once in the entire game.
Yeah, it takes a village, and Ray Lewis has a village behind him.
Yes.
I think that it's kind of funny, we're trying to talk about Flacco taking more of charge of that offense, but the real leader in that locker room is undisputed is Ray Lewis, and
Definitely.
I think he said at the end of the season last year after the Patriots beat them in the playoffs, we'll be back, and we'll be back.
He did.
Right? And you know what? They're back.
Also, we have to mention that Ed Reed became the all-time leader in interception yardage
Yes.
with a pick six.
What a pick six. That's a good way to go out and stop.
Yes.
He's ahead of Woodson now, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, so lots of great things happening there. So, Michael Vick got the job done late in the game, right, this
4
week.
picks, though.
But, you know what? Good quarterbacks and good teams finds ways to win. I think this is a close game. As a matter of fact, this might even be an overtime, field goal kind of a range.
I agree.
But I think we see Baltimore on top.
Yes.
Okay. Our next one here, Oakland visiting Miami.
Oh my!
Insert blank
Oakland.
here.
Yeah, really.
I'm wearing the jersey of shame, but you know what? Thick and thin. I can remember 72 just as well as I can remember what happened this week.
Miami Dolphins looked really bad this week. Ryan Tannehill just didn't look well, doll. I really think that Moore is a better quarterback over there, and I think he should be throwing the ball for Miami. I see Oakland winning this game. I see Darren McFadden maybe having a good game on the ground, and I think Carson Palmer will get the job done, and Oakland will beat Miami in a low-scoring game.
Miami's only chance is if Bush gets a lot of carries, and he's not getting the ball. Matt Moore and Reggie Bush. But I agree, Oakland. New England at home to Arizona. Wait, we should probably find out who's starting quarterback for the Arizona.
Well, Skelton's gone down for 2 to 4 weeks, so it's Kevin Cobb. So who we kidding? New England big.
Yeah,
Anyway,
right.
next. The Jets are in Pittsburgh.
And
What do you
again,
think?
I think Rex Ryan and his Jets get it handed to them. I think Pittsburgh is going to tear this team apart. This won't even be close. I think that Roethlisberger and company rock over the Jets and show that they're really not that big a team that beat Buffalo.
And I think Roethlisberger will have a big game too. I don't see it as a blowout. I really think that the Steelers and the Jets will play a close game here. But I agree. I think the Steelers come out on top.
Okay. Next, Houston in Jacksonville.
Houston. Houston had 5 turnovers this past week.
Yeah.
Their defense is just too much for Jacksonville to handle. Houston should win this game.
Arian Foster.
Cut and dry. Arian Foster, yes, will have a huge game.
Okay. Up next, San Francisco at home to Detroit.
Got to pick the 49ers after the way they played this week. I mean, upsetting the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau with the defense playing like it was. Detroit had to have a comeback there to beat the St. Louis Rams, and Detroit's playing at home. So Stafford with a bad game there, but he'll bounce back. Detroit will score some points in this game.
I think so too.
They won't do anything on the ground, maybe 3 here.
No, Stafford is the key, and I think this is a closer game than we're. I think Detroit beats the spread here. I think that this is going to be really close.
Really?
This might even be a 3-point game, but San Francisco will win the game.
I agree.
How about Dallas in Seattle?
Seattle is always a great home team. Hard to beat Seattle at home, but Dallas came out. I mean, those corners played great in that game against the Giants, and I don't think Seattle has enough to win this game. I think Romo will probably come out with another big performance. He looked really good last week. Actually, I think it's the best he's ever looked. And Dallas wins.
And it was kind of funny. I picked Seattle last week over to Arizona, and Cobb comes in and ruins that for me, off the bench after Skelton gets hurt.
Yes.
But the other side of that was, I was talking about that tandem of Seattle receivers, Golden Tate, that new receiver, and Sidney Rice. Now Tate's injured. I find out late in the game that he's not playing last week. I'm not sure what the timetable is in his return, but that's a dimension that needs to be filled up there. Based on that alone, I have to agree with you. I think Dallas goes in to Seattle and they win big.
Yes.
Okay, how about Cincinnati at home to Cleveland?
The Battle of Ohio. I think A.J. Green has a big game. I think the Bengals' defense is better than what they played against Baltimore, and I think they can bounce back, especially considering that Cleveland is their opponent. And I think Cincinnati will win this game. Maybe close, because this game is always a battle. I think A.J. Green has a big game since he wins.
5-6 points. I think
Yeah.
the rivalry keeps it half close.
Yeah.
Good. Minnesota in Indianapolis.
Go ahead.
Well, it's Indianapolis. Sorry. Dwight Freeney, questionable this week, or I think his ankle is still not very good. And I think that Minnesota, Adrian Peterson made a statement this week.
He did 2 touchdowns.
Came back and played very, very well.
Yes.
I think that he's going to give fits to that defensive line. I think he's going to run big against Indianapolis.
Yes, I agree.
And I see this being something you would turn off in the second quarter. I really do.
Yep, we both picked Minnesota there for sure, yes. Next game, we have Tennessee at San Diego.
And I can't help but be impressed with the San Diego Chargers, as much as that hurts me to say. Not a big San Diego fan. They played well this week. I think at home to Tennessee, Chris Johnson is not going to be enough to slow that team down. I think that West Coast bend, I think San Diego wins probably by 7, 8, 10 points.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, San Diego has always been a great home team. Phillip Rivers, although I really don't like him, is a great quarterback. And yeah, San Diego should take this game by a touchdown, maybe more.
Okay. We've also got New Orleans in Carolina. And I don't think no-brainer here as well, I think.
I'm not sure it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's a divisional rivalry. I am definitely picking New Orleans to win this game, but I mean, they gave up 40 points to Washington last week. Their defense is not looking great. That being said, Carolina is not as strong a team. They're having problems. I'm not sure if Stewart's going to be back at the running game, but D'Angelo Williams actually ran for minus yardage, I believe, last week. So their ground game is not doing well. I think the Saints, Drew Brees bounces back in this one, and the Saints take it by a touchdown.
Okay.
6 or 7.
Fair enough. I mean, and you know what? That game against Washington, they gave up 40 points, but that game was a one-score swing right up till that interception late in the fourth quarter. Drew Brees and that offensive line clawed their way back into that game. That wasn't even close at the half, and they really started to give trouble to that Washington defensive line. So, you know, and we all know Drew Brees is Drew Brees. He can throw. You know, for the fantasy owners out there like myself, I had him in one league last year. I think he was good for 27 points this week.
Drew Brees is Drew Brees.
Yeah, that's right. And so that being said, I think New Orleans wins big. And finally, we've got the new-looking Washington Redskins in St. Louis.
RG3.
Yes.
320 yards. I think he had another 40.
42, I think, on the ground.
On the ground.
One of the biggest rookie performances, I think, from a quarterback ever in NFL history. He walked in, he looked poised right from that first drive against New Orleans. Well, look at that ball he threw to Garcon. I mean, you know, he looked like someone like a Manning or a Brady throwing that ball down and just laid it in. And in the places where he needed to get the job done and he was under a little pressure, he was great under pressure. So, look, this kid is only going to get better and better, and I think he does a lot for the game. And you know what? St. Louis can't touch these guys. I think they walk in there and they just own this.
And speaking of Drew Brees, RG3 outplayed him last week. And Drew Brees came over after the game and told Griffin that he was proud of him. And classy move by Brees. Yeah. Griffin had a tremendous game, though.
Absolutely.
I agree. I think Washington goes into St. Louis, and I think they'll win big.
We saw some big performances out of that Washington team this week. Ray Helu Jr., you know, he did fairly well. But the other fellow that
Morris.
Yeah, Morris. He really impressed me. He was bouncing off tackles, getting that extra couple of yards.
He had 2 touchdowns.
You know, but it just seemed like every time he touched the ball, he made things happen. Like, you know, where people were getting like 2 yards a carry, he's bouncing off a tackle.
I believe you called him a greased pig earlier. Is what he looked like.
I did. He did. He looked like a greased pig. He was hard to take down, and just. All of those ornaments you had, you know, coupled with RG3, who was able to run out of the pocket as well. Big man, and I think this is something that Washington team really needed. I think this is, you know, back to the days of Mark Rippon, you know, like where they had someone that
long time since they had a franchise quarterback. RG3 is definitely going to fit the bill.
Good,
he's the real deal.
So that's the picks for the week.
Yes.
So again. We're varying on 4, John. Maybe I'm going to be down a good number of these at the end of next week. Some of these picks are out there, and I think that, you know what? You don't outpick the pros by picking like a panty waist. So, you know what? I'm gonna go out there and I'm going to put those big picks out. But I do want to say to you, congratulations last week, and here's your Justin Bieber stickers for your wonderful picks last week.
Yeah. They're yours, pal.
You can put those all over your foot spa, man. All right. Stick around. We'll have our. You want to say something else?
I just wanted to know if you picked that Tampa Bay pick out of your purse.
Oh no, actually, I picked it out of your purse. Some wonderful
Once
stuff in
again,
there.
that doesn't belong to me. Never said it before. I believe that's
It's like the dress you're going to wear if Miami goes 8-8.
I
Anyway,
believe I'm leading at the moment.
that's all right. Enjoy that. So the Leafs last year when they beat the Canadians in Game 1, and they put undefeated up in the
Oh God.
in the
here we
Toronto
go
Star.
again.
But anyway,
Well, he's used to losing, as you can tell by this
yeah, that's right,
Dolphins
man.
jersey.
17-0, man.
Yeah.
17-0. Whoa!
Yeah.
Stick around for our closing thoughts. Welcome back to the Man Room. And we're just going to wind down now with our final thoughts for the week. Pick our team of the week and our player of the week, or performers of the week like we did last time. And I'm going to lead this off. I'm going to start with my team of the week this week. And it's going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is one of the picks we varied on this year. This week, I'm sorry. I think that with the Giants having those defensive line problems, I think the Tampa Bay it's a cherry for me. I think I'm going to pick.
Are you serious, Nancy? Come on.
Absolutely, sir. Do you see Nancy written anywhere on this jersey? You know what?
Giants going to torch him.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, here we go with this torching thing again. You know what? Yeah, I can sit here and pick all the same teams you pick while you're sitting there with your foot bath. This is how I'm gonna even the score. And remember that I said, okay, in addition to that, maybe I'll just take it a step further. That's my team of the week. My player for the week is going to be Josh Freeman. I think he has a huge game against that Giants secondary. So there's my two picks. Your turn.
Okay. My team of the week, we agreed on. I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens to go into Philadelphia and beat the Eagles. Baltimore's defense, they served notice this past week that they're going to be an elite contender, a Super Bowl contender this year. And the Eagles came out and barely beat the Cleveland Browns by 1 point. I think the Ravens have a better team, and I think they're going to win this game. My player of the week, Arian Foster, Houston. Going into Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. Jaguars don't have a great run defense, and I think Arian Foster, once again, will be. I'll give him 2 touchdowns for sure. He might have 200 yards. Arian Foster is definitely my player of the week.
Okay. So here we are, Tuesday night. And just to remind everybody, sometimes you'll hear things in our podcast that say, hey, you know what, that guy he's out of the lineup, or like we've had situations where people, like I said, Golden Tate, Derek Johnson. We're doing this on a Tuesday. We don't have the benefit of leading right up to the last minute. So just a reminder, sometimes you'll hear things in here that don't make sense on game day because we've picked them a week out. So this is just raw, in-your-face picks and prognostication. So here we are into week 2. We want you to enjoy the games this week. Come back and see us next week to see how we did. So it's good night from me in the Man Room.
Have fun.